the sun, that's where the story comes from, rang in the new year with a bang, unleashing its most powerful solar flare. While spectacular, such outbursts can impact satellite communication and power grids on Earth. How do we protect our systems, which are really, really persnickety when it comes to power? How do we safeguard our systems?
Well, first, aren't we all sick of the sun? I mean, I carry a solar flare gun just for this purpose, for defense against solar flares. The sun only knows violence, Tim. That's all it knows. You just got to speak its language.
The sun, giver of all life. The Mayans worshiped the sun. Then they disappeared without a trace. Don't let this happen to you.
Protecting against solar flares, the future of return to work, and the MSG Sphere has its first glitch. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 646, recorded Friday, January 5th, 2024. Bespoke AV. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest audiovisual news and information we have gathered this week. My name is Tim Albright. I am tanned, rested, and ready. Holy crap. Mitchell, the magic producer, gave me 2 weeks off. I hope you enjoyed the best of and the wrap-up for 23 and 24. But we're back to work, just like all of you. With us to discuss all the information and news we have gathered this week. First and foremost, a young lady I got to meet in person with our folks over at Pace University, but she's fantastic. And I even said to her that day that I want to get her on the podcast, and she still said yes. Kristin Bidwell from ACT Associates. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. And if you didn't catch it, check out Dan Farisi wrote a great article on it on Commercial Integrator about our panel there at Pace. So check that out. A couple of other old buddies who used to be on their own podcast. I guess this is a roundup or a reunion of AV SmackDown. First and foremost, Mark Coxon from AVI-SPL. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Tim. Thanks for having me.
And the other half of AV SmackDown, Chris Neto. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Aunt Brew? Nice to see you again.
Wow. It's the hair, kids. All right, if you're not watching the video, my hair has actually gotten longer since the last time I did this, which was only 2 weeks ago. First story comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. Oh, the horror! A technical hitch marred the world's largest LED display the day after Christmas when a conspicuous white spot appeared on the 55,000 square meter. For those of us in the U.S., that's 182,000 square feet. Exosphere, the sphere enveloping the landmark MSG Sphere building in Las Vegas. Social media users, of course, spotted the malfunction in the early hours, with some mistaking the frozen pixels for a crack in the massive curved video display. The operators at the MSG Sphere confirmed a small number of LED pucks had stayed white instead of changing colors in sync with the rest. We've talked a lot about the Sphere. Everybody in our industry has talked a lot about the Sphere. I'll talk about the AVNation Reader's Choice Awards in a moment. At the end of the show, it's on the dock to be the AV install of the year. It opened up in earnest, like the first video was shown the 4th of July here in the States. U2, of course, opened up the end of September. Mr. Neto, we're going to start with you. This is a huge, high-profile install for everybody involved. How do you safeguard against something like this happening?
Buy extra panels.
Jeez.
I mean, come on, dude. We're in the business. This is not called AV Week, and you're bringing in rookies. You're bringing in people that have dealt with this stuff, right? So for just quality of business and just being business smart, you don't buy just 100 panels. You buy the extra, and you get them all in the same lot, and you make sure that they all come off the same.
This is a bespoke system,
bro. It's as bespoke as it is also right now it's broke. So you got to fix it. All right. And I've made you laugh within the first 5 minutes. My job here is done. Thank you, folks. My name's Chris.
I'm out.
So right now, what are you going to do? You don't think product failures happen? It happens to everybody. It happens. Man, how many cars have been recalled in the history of cars, and even the nice cars that are all electric and run by a guy who runs
Tesla just had a huge, ginormous recall. Yeah.
You have to be prepared for this sort of stuff. And that is just good business and good trade. Now, if the folks there, yes, they see it, they acknowledge it. One of the pucks are done. It could be just a reset, because we know how we fix things. Is first you got to turn it on and off and maybe just unplug it and plug it back in. Maybe it'll work, right? But, you have to be prepared. As somebody who sold LED in the past, you don't just sell those 100 panels that you need for that job. You sell a few extras because how many, and this is the stats that we don't know, how many broke during the install?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, just that alone. And when I was there for NAB in March of last year, prior to the opening, it was already doing its soft opening. It was spinning some colors of RGB just to kind of warm it up and get it ready. They don't live forever. Nothing is forever, including TVs, LEDs, OLEDs, organic, all that sort of jazz. So you have to be prepared. I think it's good business. And if anything, it is good for, for good practice that if you're going to put out something that is going to be on a microscope or under the magnifying glasses, you better be prepared. Maybe shut it down every so often and get that like preventative maintenance. Do you have to run it during the day? Check these things. It's good practice, and we are going to push the limits, especially of what an outdoor LED can do in that particular type of setting, which doesn't have a four seasons per se, but I can't wait to see what a year of the heat and the sun and the blasting is going to do to something like this. So prepare for, buckle up. It's not going to get fun.
All right, Coxon, same question. What do you do when something like this breaks?
Well, I mean, you have millions of pixels. So to think that none of them will ever go out, reset, freeze, I think would be short-sighted for sure. You mentioned this is bespoke. I actually think that it's more important to have spares when you have something that's bespoke. You can't replace it with anything commercially available off the shelf. And when you're doing this, you obviously want to make sure that hey, we're going to have failure. This hasn't been done before. There's always going to be more of a risk involved with something that is brand new and hasn't been done. And so I think the people that built the Sphere, I mean, I assume, MSG did a really good job at making sure they have extra equipment, et cetera. Monitoring is always great. So they proactively know if something's out, something's not getting picture, something's not the temperature that it's supposed to be. So having some type of back end built in to know when these things are going out is great. And then for, anytime you have time you have something that's live, like a show, even if it's a fixed install, to really take some of those practices from live and events. So the way that we terminate cables, the way that we have service loops, the way that we could have patch panels, or we have redundant failover equipment if a processor goes out or something like that we can just quickly patch the new processor in, get those back up, take the old piece of equipment out, something that's hot swappable, et cetera. Those practices really come into play in anything that has kind of a live contingency to it. So, I work on a lot of auditoriums or meeting spaces that are like large all hand spaces. And we try to build those to pro standards so that when those things happen, it's an easy switch over and you're not actually losing airtime, as things are happening. So I think if you just look at that, those are things you do. I don't know that the Sphere has or hasn't done those. I think it is kind of funny that it's like a break in the simulation, right? Everybody thinks that the sky's falling when a couple of the things fall out. I always thought it'd be cool to film the Truman Show in there. Shouldn't we go back to that with the big LED Sphere? But no, I think those are the main things that I would think about when we're thinking about redundancy in a system that needs to be on all the time.
For you Gen Zers, go look it up. I'm sure it's on Netflix. It's what my son would call an old movie, is the Truman Show. Kristin, one of the things here is Kristin designs systems. She has no affiliation with MSG Sphere, so this is, she is not affiliated with that in any way, shape, or form. But when you design systems, how do you design for failure? How do you design to, not prevent, right? Because I think we're all agree here that stuff will happen. But how do you design for when it does fail?
Well, first off, I was actually, and no one at the Sphere is going to like hearing this, I was excited to see that something went wrong.
Okay. Just
because we talk to clients about next, day 2 all the time, and that something's going to happen, right? It's AV, it's technology, it's never 100% perfect. The install never goes 100% perfectly, no matter how well it's designed. There's always something. There's always a gotcha. So to see a multi-billion-dollar system, something happened within the first year. I thought that was fantastic because now I can use that as an example. No matter how much money you're going to throw at it, something's going to happen. So you want to take preventative steps. not just buying high quality commercial components, but you also want to have top talent designing the systems. You want to have top talent installing the systems. Installation is huge. You know, sometimes on bid packages, we fight with clients to actually get a really good installer to install the systems, and it matters so much on how the equipment gets installed, and also what's the day 2 service, what's the manufacturer warranty. You know, someone on Twitter I saw, as a joke about the Sphere, they said, "Oh, I hope they got the extended warranty," right? Which made me laugh, but I was like, yeah, like what's the warranty on that? Especially with LED walls, there's such a diverse range depending on what company and manufacturer you work for. Sometimes their warranties go up to 2 years, some lifetime, or extended lifetime, right? So it really depends, and all of that should factor into designs as well. Thinking about that day 2, thinking about how it's going to get serviced when it does fail or when something goes wrong. It was also mentioned to have some kind of management solution, right? You want a remote solution where you can monitor your systems and make sure everything's going well before it fails. So I think all of those elements and everything the guys just mentioned really play a key role in making sure that failure is minimal in the future.
I appreciate you saying failure is minimal. It's not, because it's not avoidable, right? Stuff is going to happen, even something like this. All right, our next story, the sun, that's where the story comes from, rang in the new year with a bang, unleashing its most powerful solar flare since 2017. Stick with me, because this is not a science lesson, Neto. Just hours before 2024 began, according to scientists, the massive X5 class eruption. Just for the record, that's the biggest, right? X5 is kind of like the Richter scale. The X5 is the biggest one. It was spotted by satellites monitoring the sun on December 31st. The flare peaked at 2155 UTC, releasing vast amounts of radiation and charged particles. While spectacular, such outbursts can impact satellite communication and power grids on Earth. Coxon, that's where we're going with this. Power is not sexy. I am terribly sorry to our friends at Furman, to our friends at Surgex, to our friends at Snap One. It's not something that they don't run. People are not going to run to power management systems at ISE in 4 weeks, right? It's not what they're going to do. They'll end up there, but they're not going to run there the first day. How do we safeguard our systems, right? And the reason I bring this up, not just because it's cool to talk about solar flares, but at least in the States, there has been an awful lot written and talked about the fragility of our electrical grid, right? Other countries, the age and fragility of their electrical grid. Just like what this story we just talked about, there is going to come a time when power is going to go out, or we're going to have brownouts, which from my definition is not complete loss of power, but lost in voltage, right? Lost in the amount of power. How do we protect our systems, which are really, really persnickety when it comes to power? How do we safeguard our systems?
Well, first, you know, aren't we all sick of the sun? I mean, climate change, now solar flares. This is why I carry.
Just get rid of it.
I carry a solar flare gun just for this purpose, for defense against solar flares. The sun only knows violence, Tim. That's all it knows. You just got to speak its language. No, I mean, obviously there are a lot of best practices around protecting your systems from surge protection, from brownouts, you know, using power protection, using power conditioners, all of those things. And then also in the design of how we put things together, you know, decoupling racks, making sure the racks are grounded individually, maybe not ganging them together, maybe using fiber more to connect devices so that we're not creating a copper conduit between every piece of equipment in a building, all the back to one place where the surge happens at a rack, and now everything in the actual facility is now dead because electricity travels down copper, you know. So I think if we start to think about those things, there are ways that we can mitigate this. Or you know, if somebody dropped a magnetic pulse bomb in a space, are we going to be able to design a system that protects us from that? No, like we're not going to get around the fact that our systems use electricity, and if electricity is gone, they're not going to work. UPS backups. I think we have more promise with battery technology now than we've ever had for some of those things. Having alternate ways to power things through PoE as a backup source or things of that nature sometimes help, and we keep things out of the 110 network of plugs all throughout the building, that now we can have cameras going back to PoE switches that we can protect on a UPS, et cetera, and not have them contingent on the power panel. I think there are a lot of things you can do, but I'm not an EE, as is apparent by my answer right now. So I would leave those.
All right, Kristin, same question, and you're the designer here. So we're going to lean on you for that. How do we put these in the system? Like seriously, again, it's not sexy. And a lot of times when their customers are value engineering, which is my nice way of saying cutting costs just haphazardly, how do you have that conversation and say, look, kid, you might want to keep this in there?
I say I can catch on fire and you're going to lose your system.
There you go.
I was on site, and I won't say what project, but we had a integrator who wasn't well versed in power, and he had to move the rack for some reason, and he had like 4 different extenders going, and it was like power strips and then just extension cables and another power strip going to the rack. And I walked in and I brought the client, and I was like, all of that is going to catch on fire. Like, unplug it now. Just stop, So it's incredibly important, especially when we're seeing, phenomenon that that's what's going on right now. I'm personally in New Hampshire. We could actually see the northern lights light up last month. That's really cool. It's also kind of scary, right? And what's it going to do to the power grids? So I think anything from commercial installations to even in your house, if you have a remote studio, like we're a remote home office, like all of us do, I think adding surge protectors versus power strips is really important. If you have some pretty heavy AV gear, look into getting surge protectors. It can absolutely help save all of your equipment. We ask for surge protectors in every rack. We ask for isolated ground for our rack, and just making sure that it's grounded correctly is a big deal. A power surge. So I'll kind of talk about 2 different types of, power that can hit your rack. There's a voltage spike. So this is a sudden increase in electrical voltage that can last for a very short duration. So something that just hits your system. In this quick type of surge, it can overload the dedicated electronic components in your gear, leading to complete failure. A power surge, on the other hand, is a longer lasting and more intense electrical surge. It can be caused by lightning strikes or electrical grid fluctuations or power outages. And these surges can generate a massive amount of energy into your gear that is it's not designed to handle and blow your system. So when you want to think about that and how important it is. Your AV gear, when it's exposed to these types of spikes or power surges without proper protection, you really run the risk of damaging the internal circuitry or causing a fire or burning out your components.
Good night. Neto, I'm going to bring you in on this. I am reminded of this, what Kristin just talked about with the power surge. And a buddy of ours, Joe Whitaker, he currently works for Origin Acoustics, but he used to have a integration firm here in St. Louis, and he took a job over from another integrator, probably the same one that Kristin was just talking about with the several power strips, who, let's just say he lost a bunch of gear when lightning struck an old mansion here locally called the Olin Mansion. And Joe came in and the lightning strike hit the security gate. And because of the way that the integrator had everything wired, that power surge traveled all the way back to the AV rack and burned every CCTV and every component along the way and toasted everything. I mean, we're talking control systems, DSPs, distributed audio, the whole bit. Joe did a good job of going back in and redoing it. But again, I restate my initial statement. Power's not sexy, but it's important. How do we as an industry raise that level? I mean, because back to Kristin's example, we had an integrator who didn't really take power very seriously. So maybe we need to start here locally at a grassroots and say, okay, the AV industry. We need to, how do we elevate the conversation about power and the importance of protecting it?
Yeah. By the way, I hate this story. I am so not the science guy. I'm not Bill Nye, dude. I don't know what you thought of when you asked me this question, but okay. But I am a distributor of power, right?
You are.
Yes, I am, dude. There is not enough power.
There's an inside joke there too, because you distributor power distribution.
Yeah, you know it. You know how that works. So anyway, I am just going to just go to what I know of power surges and power distribution and the products that I sell. One of the things that has come over the course of the last 10 years or so has been the smart power, right? One of the biggest problems as me being a former on-site person and a designer was that we'd have these weird power fluctuations, right? In a place like it doesn't necessarily have to be a solar flare. So I'm going to change the topic on you. But I worked at a campus, right, which kind of had their own, power station. And it was never 100% perfect. It would fry things would blow. We had old school projectors. The projector lamps would go. Obviously, remote management, going back to the story of the Sphere, which is more in our wheelhouse than this crazy story that you want to talk about. So we have the power management. We get all these alerts that are telling us. I think what has really come about in the world of power management is that we now have the ability to remote view what the heck's going on. Because in the past, everything would just blow out, right? Now you're getting notifications. Now you kind of, these things are preventing the little brownouts, the little power spikes and the surges and keeping you up and running. But more importantly, in the world of AV, we don't have to run anymore to go hit that on button on the projector because it protected it, right? But one of the things that we also have to keep reminding, and as far as my technicians go at the time when I was working on site, was that some of these things are meant to take a hit and then they're done. Right? They did their job. You lived your life, power guy, power thing. You did a good job. You protected it. Right now, you got to pull that thing out. It just because it has a light on doesn't mean it's going to be able to take another hit. Right? So from a power perspective, power is super important. It's not the sexiest thing. I'll just keep going back to that, Tim. There is no, power surge protector, 12-month calendar, of cool power projectors. I'm running out of things to say. I hate this question.
But you did wonderful. Final story comes to us from Scarlett Woodford from Future Source Consulting, writing in Rave Pubs about strengthening return to office value. Woodford writes about his companies compel employees back to the office. The next generation of collaboration tools will redefine the post-COVID workplace, according to new research from Future Source Consulting. She is reporting that corporate audiovisual budgets faced pressures in 2022, but are poised to rebound as organizations invest in technologies promoting equity between in-person and remote participants. Kristin, we're going to start with you as the designer and somebody who works on this. What are you seeing for 23 and into 24? Not to be silly, just a reminder, the jobs Kristin is working on and designing probably won't be ready to go until 24, 25. But what are you seeing as you're talking to your clients?
A lot of our commercial and biotech clients are building these pretty elaborate all-hand spaces. For one, That's usually their main kind of focus. That would include a video wall, projector, multiple displays. It's really the space where you can have all hands meetings or have just people feel comfortable in this space to meet, to collaborate, to talk with each other and interact in person. Those spaces are obviously also accommodating to remote participants as well. So Zoom, Teams, we're seeing a lot of both of those. Those are the two probably primary UC applications that we're seeing going on right now. But these spaces are really to bring everyone in locally that can come in or, invite remote offices as well, and trying to give everyone meeting equity, like you said, in the space and have everyone's voices heard. We're also seeing a lot of huddle spaces. There's a lot of open space now. So people are getting rid of cubicles and having like these desks with like minimal acoustical treatment, which I'm a little worried about, but I'll get there in a second. And these desks that are kind of just lined up, but then also a lot of open collaboration spaces, a few conference rooms. There's definitely still a need for the large, medium, and small conference rooms, lots of huddle spaces, some telephone booths for people that want privacy. I am seeing a move away from the desk phone rapidly decreasing. and companies selling headsets. I think sound masking is definitely increasing. Everyone wants sound masking now in the spaces because of the lack of actual personal offices.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting to me, and it's really, I see a lot of business owners or CEOs really trying to make it a cool place to go. So whether that's a game room, a music room, like something fun to attract people to, just the overall aesthetics of the meetings or the corporate office has been pretty elaborate. I've really enjoyed seeing what architects and interior designers are doing in these spaces, because they're really cool to go to and visit and design within. Something interesting that, just from my personal view, is it's definitely hard to get people to come back, right?
Yeah.
It would have been different, I think, if COVID would have lasted a month, but we had a couple of years to get really good at working from home. And I feel like when I talk to a lot of people do it well. My team is fully remote and they're amazing. And I don't worry about their work, and they perform well. So it's an interesting dynamic to see all this money going into all these commercial spaces. And I wonder how they're actually pulling their employees back in. And I think it's interesting. It's something I was thinking about, was, my home office, when COVID hit, it sucked. I made it really good. It is awesome now. And so I'm not sitting in it at the moment, but it's obviously they're like, oh, this is a great little white wall, right? But I've got the automatic standing desks. I've got the 4 displays. I've got the incredible audio speakers set up. I've got a podcast station. I've got a fireplace. I've got my dog. I've got my coffee station. Like it's like, I put some time into it and I love it. And I love working there. I have a view of the mountains, surrounded by windows. Like, why would I not want to work there? So when companies say, oh, do you want to come back to the office? I'm like, well, do I get this? Because that kind of, I made it a home office space and something that I'm very comfortable in. And I don't have any distractions and I can focus. And if I'm sitting there for 12 hours a day working, I don't really feel like it was 12 hours. And so I think companies are struggling with, well, where do we put all the people when they come back in? And I've heard the conversation of, well, I can't sit that close to somebody because then they're going to talk too loud. Now I can't focus. And I think that we've gotten so used to not being in the office with the surrounding noise. Now we're at home, we're really comfortable, no noise. And we go back and there's like 50 people talking. And it may not have been annoying before, but now it's like, oh my God, I can't focus. So I am seeing more and more headsets being sold to try to accommodate for that. So there's not noise. But it is an interesting conversation that I've had with a lot of people. And it will be interesting to see how utilized these phenomenal office spaces are being, in the next couple of years. Like, will that return to office actually happen? And how many people are going to come back in? And is it for 2 times a week? And then was it worth the investment? And I think for some companies where you need in person, if you're, collaboration, absolutely, those spaces are amazing. But it's a conversation we have in the industry. It's like, oh, we're designing this awesome space. I hope it gets used.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really interesting. But I know a lot of business owners are very hopeful, and I think we have a lot of biotech clients, so they do a lot of collaboration in their teams. So I think in that kind of a situation, yeah, they'll see a big return. But I don't know about corporate. I mean, I was down in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I was in Times Square on like a Thursday at 2 p.m. and no one was in the office. Well, you just look around and everything's empty. Yeah. So it's like, it's a really interesting time. And I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball on what's going to happen, but it's, I look forward to Mark and Chris talking about this, because it's just an interesting time in our industry, and I have no idea where it's going.
All right, Neto, what do we see in the return to office and meeting equity there, sir?
First of all, book me in 4 years out, maybe 8 years out, when this actually really pans out, because we got to go through, and what everybody keeps talking about in the industry is, the return to office, and every article out of Forbes and all these places are trying to talk about the return to office and the failure and how great it is. Right now, it's all propaganda. Honestly, where we're going with this is not going to shake out for another 8 years, maybe 10 years, 15 years. We need the current leases to come to an end for the ones that can't terminate. Then you're going to see desperation on the people that are designing the spaces, and obviously the owners of the spaces, to make it more comfortable. The reason why Kristin's office works is because it's comfortable to Kristin. The reason why I like working from home is my back has been bothering me. I can randomly just lay out on my floor, put my legs up against this wall. You do not need a mental picture of this, and stretch out my back. Now,
Too late.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. But anyway, going back to what we were talking about, do not rudely interrupt me again, Mr. Albright. I would like to say that we are going to see the shakeout in about 10 years. Until then, we're going to get forced cool. And I don't know a better way to put it. I'm going to get you some round seats, and you're going to get these like poofy looking, marshmallow seats, and that's cool. And we're going to give you the pool table. Okay, the pool table went away. That was so 2016, 17, when everybody wanted to go googly, right? And everybody wanted these really funky things. And we're going to keep in the office till 10 o'clock at night. And it was a different workforce. The workforces that have graduated and come into the workforce don't care about the pool tables. They don't care about the marshmallow seats. Now, all of a sudden, you got a completely different new generation of workforce people entering the space that you want to hire, because the other ones that you want to hire are entrenched in their jobs that they absolutely love, because they get to work from home and they don't have to fight with this. You got to go back, right? The commute sucks out energy and life out of people, and they will refuse. And that's the problem. The new generation, and you can print out all the ads that you want that tell me that they really want to be in spaces. I get the mentorship, but I can spend a half an hour every day with somebody who I am on my team, and they can mentor me remotely. There is no difference. The only difference is that I don't know how to properly pick up sushi with my chopsticks. Maybe that I would learn in person, but outside of that, I don't need to be at a water cooler to find out things. I can create the water, of all people. I can create a water cooler on video, right? So I don't need that physical. But what's interesting is the luring with the technology, and that's where we come into play. What do we have? I think every year we go to an InfoComm, we go to an ISC, and we go, as you are going to CES, to find that one magical thing that could possibly bring them back, right? Many years, not many years ago, about 5 years ago, it was biophilia. Everybody wanted to bring plants into the space, and sound and light and water running. All you had was a half a dozen people running to the bathroom every half hour because the trickling water drove them nuts. I'm just saying, right? And now you have this battle of open space with the acoustic properties. I agree with you, Kristin, but does that mean we need to shut out the sounds around us, or do we have to focus now, kind of like focus, the Lazer guided microphones, right? Now, do we need to have focus guided kind of museum space speakers over us, keeping our sound within a cone of silence, right? Or a cone of area. So I think the whole design, the whole plan right now, we are probably going to live through the most tumultuous point, because you have this angst of people going back. You have technology that's trying to desperately find the one hook that they can bring into the space, whether it's great audio, great video. We can provide you great audio, great video. And then ultimately you have the companies that are looking at it and go, we're going to we're going to spend all this money to get all this technology to bring them back. And then they're going to look at that bill, and then you're going to start seeing layoffs. You're going to start seeing things happen again, because the money that they spent to lure you back is not getting the production that they're looking for. I've sat through a lot of smart people telling me very smart things on stage about how we're going to bring people back. And every single one of them is still not there, unfortunately. And I go to modern work space conferences with that Crestron had put up, and everybody there had great numbers and great stuff, but you can skew those numbers. The fact of the matter is that the workforce is going to determine this. And for the first time in my career, these last 4 years, it's the employees that are kind of setting the tone And then you see this flip, which we recently saw, where people were like, well, if you're not coming back, peace out, in the corporate space. So it's a very odd time. I'm with you on this, Kristin. I don't know if we're 100% there yet. And the designs that you're working on today are built around a space that was designed 5 years ago by a designer. I just think that the space and the designers are still catching up. We can have the latest technology, but it's not. We're trying to basically rig it into a space to make it comfortable for a person who would rather have a mountain view and a dog.
You did touch on something, that they are spending so much money on this. And when I talk to my team, I ask them, I'm like, so would anyone, and we're very honest with each other, I'm like, does anyone want to go back and work into the office? Silence. Does anyone want to meet up for dinner? Yes. They will drive out of state to come hang out. Last night, we had people driving from 2 different states to meet in a center point just to go out for Italian food for a couple hours, and we had a blast. And we do those kinds of things. We go to trade shows together. We'll go to Jersey and do walkthroughs at manufacturing plants. We'll go, woo, Jersey, but we'll do a lot of local things, because now that COVID's over, every rep is on the road. So they're doing so many other activities, and they enjoy that. And so it's like, okay, well, let's put money towards training, maybe in person, right? Let's put money towards the technology for your home office so you can work more efficiently. Like, where are those conversations? It's always like, hey, let's buy the couch. It's like, well, can I get a good headset?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
The technology is so powerful there. And I am somebody who I felt like I was getting like my head was evaporating of knowledge, right, during the time of COVID. So I scoured the internet and basically called up my manufacturers. When are you doing training? What kind of training can I take online? And I did. And I made it a concerted effort to say every week I was taking some sort of class, and I would get up early and stay up late and do that, because I felt like as if, all right, it wasn't the connection of me and Tim working in the same space, but it was how am I going to wrap my head around stuff when they ask me to come back in person, right? Or what happens when the technology, which at the time was all kind of delayed in parts shipping and stuff, what happens when they skip the next one and go to the next generation of something that I'm not, that I can't speak on, like solar flares, right? When we get past that point, like I needed to get the training. And you're right. Could it be, maybe you can take away my 10-year-old computer, because it's still on that process of it's still good. Why don't you give me a faster computer so I can have Wi-Fi 6, so I can have a better this or that, right? I think that's the catch. I think maybe that's the point. It's the learning and the community of getting together to find out stuff more so than the water cooler. Wow, that's a cool new water cooler we got there. It does ice water as opposed to whatever. So I don't know. I'm with you. There's got to be a catch, because a 6-year-old laptop isn't going to cut it when we're trying to push video, or being asked, if depending on what your job is, are you creating graphics on an old processor? Like how are you supposed to do this? And that's always been the battle between the employee or the employer and its staff. So
I often talk about this with number one with our clients, and also for workplace and things of that nature. I could talk on it for a long time. So let me say 3 things that haven't been said, or maybe said in a slightly different way. 1, if we focus on utility, we're going to lose. The utility of work can be done from anywhere, and we've proven that. Kristin made that point. We worked quite well from home for 2 years. The utility of work is not the thing to focus on if we're going to think about what the future of a social office space is, because we're going to be able to get utility. You can buy anything you want on Amazon. We still have shopping malls. You can watch any movie you want in your home, even sometimes day date. We still have movie theaters. People do not go to a place just to accomplish a task. And they have lots of motivations when they leave. There's a social motivation, there's an exploration motivation, there's an aspirational motivation of who I want to be and the type of person I see myself as. And if we're going to build the workplace of the future, we need to speak to more than the utility of the work being done at the company, and to the ethos of the people that work there, right? So that's one. And that takes a little bit of work because we never really wanted to dig into who comes here and why they like to come here and what they need to do. And maybe, you know, John needs a place to do deep work because he has a house that doesn't have a dedicated office and he has 4 kids at home. And Jenny needs a place to come because she doesn't have the technology she needs at home on her laptop to do, you know, 8 hours of rendering high res graphics and pixels that she needs a workstation and 18 monitors for, right? So we have to really look at who are the people that are working for us and what do they actually need in order to elevate their work product, not to get the utility of work done, but to do their best work in the best state of mind and in the way that they need to be supported. That takes a lot deeper of a conversation. So number one, not focusing on utility, but focusing on elevation and focusing on those different motivations of each individual person. Number two, culture is way more than a ping pong table and bring your dog to work day. You know, I got a ping pong table at home, my dog's sitting under my chair. I don't need those things in the office in order to bring me into the office, right? And mandates we've seen don't work. You know, I just read an article yesterday that what happens when you mandate, what you do is you take away the motivation. The motivation is lower than ever now in companies that are mandating back to work, and the happiness of the employees is actually dropped. So what happens is when they go home, they log out, they don't do the extra work. They're done. You're going to make me come to the office from 9 to 5, then great. You get 9 to 5 out of me. That's what you get when I'm here at work. That's where you want me to work. That's where I'm working, right? And it's actually not producing the results that they want, because when you want people to come in because you want them to be collaborative, you're saying, oh, we're building this space so that you'll be collaborative, so that you'll network more, et cetera. But they're not happy and they're not motivated, so they don't do those things when they go in there anyway, because they don't want to be there, right? So the mandate doesn't actually produce the result. They have to want to go there to do those things in order for those things to be able to be done effectively. And so we have to think a little bit more about that. And the last thing I would say is just, I agree with Chris on this design and on leases and everything else, on the motivation. You know, every study you see will be slanted towards whoever wrote the study. You know, electronics are on the rise by Crestron. Workspace will never go away by JLL. You know, furniture is the key to unlocking the office by Steelcase. You know, so you're going to see these things out there, but they all have a motivation. Really, the real question is, and it's the hardest question because it requires people to get rid of sunk cost thinking and technical debt. But if I had nothing, what would I build? If I was going to start this company today, would I build an office? And if I did build an office, what would I build that office in order to facilitate that I'm not getting from my employees working remotely? And any plan that doesn't start there is doomed to fail, because it's not based on value and current situation, right? It's based on, oh, I have 7,000 square feet and half my chairs are empty and it makes me really sad. It makes me upset that I'm spending all this money because nobody's sitting in my chairs. That's not a reason for people to come back. And it never will be, right? And so that's what's going to happen. I think there is a case for space, 1,000%. I think experiential workplace is a huge opportunity in our future, but we have to reframe our thinking around it.
But one of the things that you said makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Mark, I obviously you and Kristin are a lot smarter than me in this sense, but I would like to add that one of the biggest problems that we, or that integrators may have, is when the conversation shifts from, you know, how many cubicles, right? You're talking about cubicle space and say it's 50,000 square feet. How many cubicles are in there? And oh my God, they're going to cut that space down and there's going to be less cubicles in the space. I don't believe that we make money on cubicles. I believe that if this is a business, we shouldn't stop focusing on the cubicles. The space may minimize, but what you're going to get is bigger gathering spaces, which is where we matter, right? If the headset is going away, what does that tell you, right? So a shift in the size of the spaces going from 50,000 to 20,000 square feet, for example, who cares that there's only 10 cubicles? The same 6 meeting spaces are there, and they're even more enhanced now, because now we're talking about more pixels, wider screens, more ability to drop 1,000 different images on there. You're right. It is a deeper conversation, but one of the things that we have to get past is that the cubicle and the elimination of cubicles, which I think is the future, is that it's not going to be a ratio that the JLLs are using today, right? Which is, X amount of square feet or whatever per person. And I know you have that in the, ready to go when it comes to how many people can fit in the space. But I think that those cubicles are going to get minimized down to a bare minimum, and you're going to start seeing more of the spaces that Kristin is designing, right? The gathering spaces, the broadcast stations, the recording booths, the things that you can't have at home. Yes, you would. I would love to give you a broadcast built facility in everybody's home, and this is how we're going to message out to the millions. It may not be the case. I may need to go spend a week in Chesterton at my headquarters because I have the ability to do that there, right? And it's still less expensive for me to fly out, spend a week there, do my recordings that I need to do in a proper space, right? And then come back and work from home. So the cubicles are going away. If there's anything you're going to take away from me in this, is that the cubicles going away is not a bad thing. It's just a place for you to put your bag. The work is done inside the collaborative and meeting and gathering spaces.
Thank you all so much. Kristin Bidwell, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you or ACT?
You can go to www.act-associates.com.
And how do they listen to your new podcast?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I just released a podcast called AV Deep Dive, and you can catch it on Spotify.
And you should go listen to it because it's really good.
Thanks, Tim.
Mr. Coxon, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or AVI-SPL?
They can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on X as AV Phenom, or if you want to see what my team and I are up to, you can go to avispl.com/X as in experience, TG for Experience Technology Group.
And if you want to hear or read Mr. Coxon write on more eloquently, you can go to ravepubs.com because he writes very, very well there. So, Mr. Neto, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Starin.biz, that's the website. That's where you find out everything you need to know about your distribution needs. That's my commercial. And that's it. Thank you, Tim, for having me. Appreciate it. Love your hair, regardless of what the other folks on this.
What about Midwich Live and the podcast studio at ISE?
Yes, you will see me at AV on Air at ISE in Barcelona. I will be putting together a bunch of people that are going to be using the space to record, such as if Kristin, you would like to record live from ISE, I have a fully functional, 100% operational and high-tech conference space for you to use on the show floor. I do have AV on Air. We will be having a Midwich Live coming up where me and Jenny are kind of doing an ISE preview, no solar flares included, so you don't have to worry about that. And outside of that, Tim, where can people find out more about you?
They can't. They don't follow me on anything on X or on LinkedIn. Follow me on nothing. But go by the website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. By the time this posts, round 2 of the AVNation Reader's Choice Award will be live. It goes live on Monday. Mr. Neto is currently in the running for a couple of things, including AV in the AM. As well as the AV Professional of the Year for like the 15th time.
Don't vote for me, folks. Don't vote for me.
I don't know.
You're so popular.
No, there's more. There's definitely people more worthy than me on that list.
I will say that it's my freaking website, and I don't get nominated. I don't know what's up with that. But round 2,
the hair.
Even if I was, I wouldn't put myself on, just for the record. Round 2 goes live. We mentioned ISE. We are going to be at ISE as well. We have a tweet up, which if you don't know what that is, it's where a bunch of us get together and enjoy some time together, networking, food and drink. It is happening at the HD Base T stand. So thank them for their support of that. Also, in conjunction with that is the Commercial Integrator 40 Under 40. You don't have to be in the 40 Under 40 to come. Just come by 4 to 6 o'clock CET on January 30th. So check that out as well. And you can register for the tweet up. You can register for ISE, or you can vote all of that at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.